Hi, this is Steve Dale, and I'm the trustee of the Golden State Pool Trust. Today, we're going to be doing part 2 of the Keep the Lanneman Promise series, or as we call it, KTLP. And today's program is going to be on advocacy and information resources. For those of you that are watching live here, I want to thank you for joining us. And through this, the way this is going to work is I'm going to be doing a little bit of an introduction. Then we're going to go to 4 videos that have been pre-recorded, and I'll be going through who these folks are. And then after that, we're going to go to a question and answer panel. Okay, so part of this is these programs are really meant for anybody who is involved in providing care or providing services in California for a person with an intellectual or developmental disability here. And so we are going to be granting credit for this here. So once again, this is part 2 of the KTLP series, which is a program which was first developed by Barbara Macy, Executive Director of the ARC of Contra Costa County, and Jim Stream, Executive Director of the ARC of Riverside. These are 2 extraordinary advocates, sadly passed away a number of years ago, but their advocacy and passion for the rights of all persons with disabilities living in the community lives on. Before we get started, for attorneys and fiduciaries watching this program has been approved for 2 units of MCLE credit by the State Bar of California by the North Bay Housing Coalition, provider number 14598. This program has 3 codes that are announced during the program that the viewer is going to need to record to verify participation in the class. If you wish to receive MCLE credit, please download the MCLE credit form at gspt.org/attorney-resources and fill in the proper codes for each section. And you'll notice there's also an evaluation form that we ask you to fill out. To be placed on our mailing list for future programs or to receive assistance with MCLE credit for this program, email amy@gspt.org. So in the KTLP1 program, Chad Carlock gave us a brief history on the Lanneman Act system, as well as an overview of the landmark case, the ARC of California versus the Department of Developmental Services. The holding in that case by the Supreme Court of California recognized the Lanneman Act as an entitlement. This was followed by Pat and Tim Hornbecker, both longtime advocates for the ARC of California on the individual program plan process, or the IPP, or how can it help you and your family. In this segment, Pat and Tim taught us about the importance of the IPP and walked us through a step-by-step process when you're looking at preparing and actually attending the IPP. I just have to tell you, whether you are a family member, a person with a disability, an attorney, or a fiduciary, the IPP is central to almost all services the regional center system provides. And so even if you don't practice in front of regional centers, it's essential to understand this process in order to serve your beneficiaries or clients. Something to keep in mind, whether you're a person with a disability, family member, or service provider, here is the IPP is key to securing essential services needed for all persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities living in the community to enjoy a quality of life that many of us take for granted. I will say one of the equations I often point to is that simplicity and disability don't seem to be 2 words that go together. And so really part of it is the more that you understand about IPPs, about the process or whatever, the better you're going to be able to serve your clients or beneficiaries. Now, in this session, we're going to build on what we learned here, and we're going to examine advocacy and information resources. And we're going to feature Jordan Lindsey, the Executive Director of the ARC of California. After that, we're going to feature Jill Escher, who's the President of the National Council on Severe Autism, and is also going to be talking to us about the San Francisco Autism Society. So part of that is to bring a disability-specific organization. After that, we have Maria Daane, who's the Executive Director of Parents Helping Parents, a family resource center in the Santa Clara Valley. And last and certainly not least, we're going to see a segment by Sheridan Nicholau, Regional Manager of the Bay Area State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Followed by this will be a panel who will handle questions and answers so we can build on what we learned. Now, one thing about these videos and what's going to happen is they're going to play sequentially here, and then we'll be looking for your questions and comments later, is each of these videos is available, and each of them is meant to stand on their own. So part of this is that, let's say you have somebody who really wants to know what is a family resource center, or let's say that you're an advocate or an attorney or a fiduciary, and you really would like to help somebody find services in your community. And to do that, you'd like them to learn more about family resource centers. You could certainly send this video to them and they could watch this independently. Same thing on all 4 videos. All of the videos that we're featuring in the Keep the Lanterman Promise series stand on their own, although for credit, you need to watch them as a group. So as we go through this, here's what I'd like you to keep this in mind. Many of the programs we're going to be looking at have directories of services, and if you're looking to find services specifically to your community, these resources are going to be a very good way to start. What I often find when I'm examining programs similar to those that you're going to examine today is that one program will lead you to another, and then to another, and then to another. It kind of presents a web as time goes on. But this is a really good entry point, not just for these programs, but for similar programs in your community. As far as advocacy is concerned, to ensure that the entitlement continues, it's essential to keep informed of challenges to the system and advocate when necessary that the legislature needs to adequately fund the Lanterman system. Chad here and Pat and Tim did a wonderful job in the first program talking about the importance of this, and this is something we need to build on. Keep an eye out for newsletters, advocacy alerts, and programs designed to alert persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to inform about challenges to the system, as well as legislative alerts when action is needed. Just as a refresher, Chad taught us in his segment that in the event that the Department of Developmental Services cannot meet the entitlement, it must go to the legislature and either ask for more funding or reduce services. In fact, one of the reasons that the service system in California for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities is more robust, for instance, than that of folks in the mental health system, is the advocacy of persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. This is why advocacy is so important in order to ensure that the entitlement continues. As far as diversity is concerned, many of these programs focus on serving the entire community and will either offer programs in different languages or list where to find them. Also, and this is really key, to community living, successful community living. True community living is not just moving from institutions to isolated group homes or isolated residential settings. True community living is being part of the community. This is true for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as family members and caregivers. Each program we will examine has resources to connect persons with disabilities and families and caregivers together to avoid isolation. And this is so important here to make sure that we have healthy caregivers and healthy families that are not disconnected and isolated. Before we begin, here's our first SCDD code, which is 7286. That is 7286. If you do not have the Golden State Pool Trust MCLE form, go to gspt.org/attorney resources or email amy@gspt.org. So our first program, which is pre-recorded here, we're going to examine the Arc of California. The Arc of California, along with the Lanterman Coalition, which Jordan will talk about, is the leading advocacy organization when it comes to legislative advocacy for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Hi. For our next segment, we're going to talk about the Arc of California here. Basically, what we want to talk about is a global statewide advocacy organization, and the ARC is certainly the leader in that area. And also, as we get into this, maybe we can talk a little bit about the Lanterman Coalition and all of that. We're joined today with Jordan Lindsey, who is the executive director of the ARC of California here. And so, Jordan, thank you for joining us today. And can you tell us a little bit about the ARC of California?
Sure. Thanks, Steve, very much for inviting me to this really important discussion that you're having. The ARC of California is an advocacy organization for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The ARC is a national organization. The ARC of California, we represent and advocate for individuals with IDD and their families. We also have chapters, local chapters throughout the state, who are providers of supports and services to individuals with developmental disabilities. So we have about 22 local chapters across the state as well.
Fantastic. And Jordan, can you tell us a little bit about the age group that you serve with the ARC of California?
Sure, absolutely. So we advocate, in our chapters provide services and supports for all ages, the span from 0 to 99. However, in California, those are kind of differentiated among certain age groups. There is the 0 to 3, which often is served by our early start services. That's early intervention services for the babies and young kids. And then, of course, they transition into school age. And so the types of services and supports that providers that are rendered by regional centers may differ for those ages, because school districts also are responsible for providing certain services and supports. And then once they transition out of school, then they're into adult services and supports, things that may be like supported employment services or independent living services or day services. However, we do advocate for the entire lifespan of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families.
Great. Jordan, I know a big part of what the ARC does is advocacy. How do you do that? How do you do that? And I know there's this thing called the Lanterman Coalition. So can you give us some idea about how that works, and what is the power behind the advocacy of the ARC in California?
Yeah, that's a really fantastic question. Our community relies entirely on advocacy, and has from the very beginning. When it was 50, 60 years ago, and it was moms, because it's almost always moms, advocating for their children who were secluded from schools, who, when they became an adult, were secluded from inclusion in the community. And it was moms back then advocating for more home and community-based types settings of services and supports. And it continues to be parents who drive the advocacy effort now. And there are organizations like the ARC of California being the oldest and the largest, but there are others as well that represent different areas of the community, the workforce being represented by labor, service providers being represented by a trade association. There are the regional centers being represented as well. And we all work together collaboratively as often as possible to advocate and move forward policy issues that are going to improve the lives of individuals with disabilities in California. And so we do have a coalition, and it is named the Lanternman Coalition, and it's a powerful coalition that has really been the driving force behind many of the really big proposals and budget investments that have been made over the last decade. And that coalition, named after the Lanternman Act, of course, which created the entitlement to services and supports in California. The Lanternman Coalition really seeks to find common ground and policies that we can move forward together. And we've been really successful in doing that. I happen to chair the Lanternman Coalition in my position as the executive director of the ARC of California. And then beyond that, what we really do is we rely on the efforts of people across the state. It is a movement. It continues to be a movement. It was a movement 50 years ago. It's a movement today. And it's a movement of people who care and are passionate about people with developmental disabilities. More and more so, it's a movement by people with developmental disabilities themselves, and of course continues to be a movement by families of individuals with disabilities. And how that plays out is people getting knowledgeable, and they increase their knowledge about what is happening in terms of the policy world, what is happening in the state legislature, what's happening in Washington, D.C., and how do they get involved. And that's where we try to come in. We try to provide the tools and resources so that our advocates, our grassroots community across the state, can take action when it's time to do so, so that we can collectively have power to influence the decisions that are being made by lawmakers. And it is that power which is that drives everything forward for us. And that power is entirely our people. It is the number of individuals across the state that we have who are involved, who care about, and who are willing to take time and their effort and energy to put in advocacy effort themselves to help improve the lives of people with disabilities.
How can one get involved with the ARC? How can one integrate with the ARC? What kind of opportunities do we have?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Great question. So whether you consider yourself an advocate or whether you just want to be informed about what is happening in the disability community in California, one of the best ways to stay informed and then to also become an advocate as a result, if you choose to do so, is through the information that we send out. And one of the primary ways we do that is through what we call our Monday morning memo. That's where we summarize and wrap up everything that has happened in the prior week, things that are coming forth in the week ahead, and that are really a prioritization for the developmental disability community as a whole. This may include new policy proposals that are being discussed in Sacramento or Washington, D.C. This may be new trainings and webinars that are happening to really make sure that everybody is knowledgeable about what is happening. It could be, really hot topic issues that are like, for example, right now there's a lot of discussion about conservatorships. And so we have commentaries and discussions about that in our Monday morning memo. And then we usually include, of course, a call to action, how people can take that next step. If they care about that issue that's being discussed, here's how you can contact your legislator, or here's how you can provide your input, or here's how you can become involved in this discussion that's happening, or how to attend this training or webinar. So the Monday morning memo that we put out is really a fantastic way to make sure that you are informed and also empowered to take action to improve the lives of Californians with disabilities.
Terrific. So, and I will tell you, I read the Monday Morning Memo every Monday here, and I would say it takes me about 6 or 7 minutes, and I find, and I don't read everything word for word. I'm sorry, Jordan, but I'm able to bring myself up to speed on what are the important issues that affect me, the people I serve, the people I care about, and I often will forward that to a lot of my fellow professionals and also families and persons with disabilities. I think it's an incredible way to keep up with what's going on. I know as far as advocacy is concerned also, there is a fair amount of education that goes on. I hear there's this conference thing that happens once a year.
Yeah, so that's another way that we try to make sure people are informed and have the latest information and sort of set collectively an agenda for the year. These are the things that we as a community want to highlight and talk about. And we use our annual public policy conference as really that forum for us. And the last couple of years, it has been virtual, which has really allowed us to expand and increase the access to people across the state. And we partner that conference with United Cerebral Palsy this year, as well as Easter Seals, to really talk about the priorities that have not only risen to the top, but that we also feel like need to be discussed. Maybe these are the issues that haven't risen to the top, but we know that they should. And we need to make sure that we're talking about them publicly and getting them out. And so another fantastic way to stay involved. We just finished one in the spring, but we'll be doing again next spring, another policy conference.
So another thing we're trying to focus on in this series is exploring what kind of services and outreach you have with people with different cultural backgrounds, with different languages and that kind of thing. Is there anything in that area that you especially focus on?
Yeah, this is speaking about priorities that need to be discussed, this is an area that we're really pushing forward. There has been documented and data to support disparities, racial disparities within the DD system in California. There are probably and likely racial disparities in many systems in our state and across our country, especially in the health and human services sector. But we have the data to show that there is a difference in the purchase of services, how many dollars are being spent for individuals, consumers who are white versus non-white. And so we want to make sure that we, again, are providing information and opportunities for empowerment for all communities. And one of the ways that we've decided to do that at the Arc of California is, we were translating information and providing interpreters in Spanish for all these different things we were doing, but we said that's not enough. And our board really committed to creating a native experience for our Spanish-speaking disability community in California. And as a result, we created and launched El Arc de California. Not a real tricky name, but it is our companion movement in Spanish. So it's not just taking what we do in English and for our English-speaking community and thinking that we are doing enough by translating that. We believe that there needs to be a dedicated experience and movement for the specific needs and unique situations of the Spanish-speaking disability community in California. So we're lucky enough to have an incredible advisory committee from leaders across the state. We also intend to have a summit in the fall, in September, to bring leaders from the Spanish-speaking disability community from all across the state together to have a summit to really create a policy platform for the Spanish-speaking community about what is going to help lessen these disparities within California and to better support families and individuals who are in the Spanish-speaking community to be served by the available supports and services.
Fantastic. So we were exploring your website, and and I would encourage folks to go to check out the Arc of California website, which just has so many things on it.
Sure. Well, starting with the website, I think it's a great place to start. And it is hopefully accessible for everybody who goes there. And there is a lot of, under our info and resources, there's a lot of those different topics, some of which I've already mentioned today, where if you are wanting to get information on a specific topic that relates to the developmental disability community, you can hopefully find that there with links to other resources or resources that we provide as well. There's also great ways to get connected to our chapters on our website, our local chapters, and that doesn't mean that you have to be an individual in need of supports and services. You can just try to get connected as a member with them, get connected as trying to support their efforts locally as well. And then you can also get connected with our advocacy efforts. And you can even sign up not only for the Monday morning memo, but for our advocacy action list as well, where you'll get specific emails about, hey, it's time to take action with an email, tweet, or call, and make that very easy for you to do. So all of that is available on the website as well. And other than that, the ARC of California is and always has been driven by families, and I think that's really important to know. Steve serves on our board, and we're so thankful for you doing so, Steve, because you bring an incredible expertise. And the vast majority of the board of directors is parents or individuals with disabilities themselves, and that just shapes who we are. That is our DNA. That is the ARC of California's DNA, is parents who are always have been and always will be passionately committed to supporting their child and supporting the community as a whole, to provide the most inclusive, best opportunities possible for the community.
So we're going to close this in just a moment here. And Jordan, thank you so much for sharing with us. I'll just tell you my perspective, as a professional here. The advocacy, the Monday morning memo, all of that from the ARC, it helps me better understand the people that I serve. It also gives me resources that I can send to my clients and my beneficiaries here so that they can be better connected with the community and sometimes better understand this incredibly confusing system that we have.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve, and want to just highlight what you said, that it can be a very complex system of services and supports. And we hope one of our goals is to give a roadmap for individuals, families, professionals, as they become more and more involved with the community, to understand regional center services, IHSS, SSI, Medi-Cal, Cal-Able, special needs trust, all these different things that are interwoven, that all are kind of the ecosystem around a person's life, that ultimately all work together, hopefully, to support that individual. And that's what we want to make sure, that all different parts of that ecosystem are informed and have the resources available, so that individuals have a very person-centered experience and feel very supported as they seek their best opportunities throughout the community.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us today, Jordan, and sharing, with us information about the ARC. Once again, this is an organization that, once again, not only provides a lot of education, but it also provides an opportunity to get involved.
Thank you for inviting me, Steve.
Our next presenter is Jill Escher, who is the president of the National Council on Severe Autism and past president of the San Francisco Autism Society. I asked Jill to share with us her insight on a disability-specific organization and how the National Council on Severe Autism, as well as the San Francisco Autism Society, assist persons with autism and their families. The San Francisco Autism Society focuses on improved community outreach and on issues related to addressing the dire need to expand the limited lifespan care options for dramatically increasing numbers of adults with autism. While the San Francisco Autism Society is not a direct service provider to persons with autism, they act as a hub for the broader autism community.
Jill, thank you so much for joining us today. And can you tell us a little bit about the Autism Society of San Francisco here? What's your mission, vision? Tell us a little bit about your board and that kind of thing, so we can get a better idea about your organization.
Sure. Hello, Steve. Thanks so much for having us. Autism Society San Francisco Bay Area has been around for uh, actually more than 55 years. We're pretty old. And we are a volunteer run organization serving 7 counties in the Bay Area: San Francisco County, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Alameda, Contra Costa, Marin, and Santa Cruz counties. We are an affiliate of the national organization called Autism Society, also known as Autism Society of America. We're one of something like 70 affiliates across the country. And we do a number of things. We have resource listings, resource referrals, an information and referral committee to people who call in or email in who need some guidance and help. We host a wide variety of community events. We've kind of become known for our autism family focused events. We also do a lot of serious stuff. We've done webinar series. We've held a lot of, well, before COVID, a lot of in-person events that were informational and educational in nature with special speakers. We're also known for our annual conference with Stanford, which has been going on now, I think, for 8 years. And that conference really focuses on the needs of adults with autism, particularly legal planning, financial planning, working with regional centers, and public benefits for adults with autism and related disabilities as well. We also engage in advocacy around key issues for our community. So that would include things like, our housing crisis. It would include things like, um, what parents need to, provide the care that the child needs. It includes things like regional center funding. Our current president is Stephen Pretzman, not me. And we have a very diverse board of people, most of whom are parents, but also professionals who care about this community.
Great. And I know I've attended your program at Stanford for many, many years, both as a presenter, but also I get so much out of it. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So this conference started off before everything's like pre-COVID and post-COVID, but pre-COVID, it was a live conference with about 400 attendees and something like 24 speakers. It really, again, it focused not on kids, but on the adults and those teens of transition age who are about to age out of the school system and into the adult system. I think you've probably heard the term falling off the cliff, Steve.
Yes.
And that refers to, the strong support, the mandate for a free, appropriate public education that comes before someone turns 22. But after age 22, let's face it, the school districts give them the boot and they are off into the adult system, which is woefully inadequate and very underfunded and not really capable of addressing the very complex needs of this population, which is very rapidly growing. So what we try to do is we try to educate parents, other caregivers, professionals about the regional center system, about public benefits, about how to find a day program, how to find housing, how to think creatively about solving problems, how to obtain medical care, what to do about problem behaviors. I mean, these things are very persistent. How to set up a special needs trust, how to do financial planning. All of these things are incredibly complex, and parents always say, "Oh gosh, I think I need a PhD in autism," and it's true. So we try to give them information so that they can improve the lives of their loved ones.
That's outstanding. So, how does one, for instance, connect with the Autism Society of San Francisco? And are there opportunities to participate?
Yes. Okay. There definitely are. I think uh, maybe what I should do is tell you about just some of the easy low hanging fruit. The low hanging fruit for us are our events. So our community loves our events. And for example, we have every summer we have 10 pool parties in San Jose, and those are really big. We have a lot of people whose children and adults really can't go to regular pools because of their behaviors, but they are welcome at our pool parties. We have a year-round, um, you know, variety of hikes around the Bay Area. They're usually not very strenuous and very family friendly. We have a series called Autism on Tap, which is basically where we meet at a restaurant. Now we do it all outdoors, of course. Kind of a patio restaurant or even a bar. And it's a chance for families to get together. Most of these are all ages, and it's really fun. And it's just very social and networking in orientation. We have a series of concerts called Escher concerts that Stephen, our president, has been putting on for years that really target families with children and adults with special needs. And those have been hugely popular. Those mostly are held at Stanford University, although not always. And then we have a lot of community partnerships, with ballets and orchestras, where sometimes what we do, it's really cool. We open up dress rehearsals to autism families. So families that couldn't take their kids to regular performance have a chance to go to these fabulous performances with their children. And that is usually provided at no or very little cost. We also do family dances, which are really fun. Again, a really fun social activity, for everybody. And hopefully we'll have another one at the end of the summer. But that's low. The events are kind of low hanging fruit. If you were more interested in advocacy, we really, really need more help on that front because there's such a need for policy change or such a need to bring up to speed our system with the current crisis we are facing. I can't emphasize this enough, Steve. Autism in California has exploded, and it's an absolute myth that we're just counting better, or we're just more aware, or we're just, changing definitions. None of that is true. We have endured a 50-fold increase in autism cases in our California DDS over the past 35 years. 50-fold increase. For every one case of autism in like the early 80s, we have 50 cases today. It's not even close. And it's not like the regional center is just letting anybody in the door. And we haven't yet reckoned with this dramatic growth and what it really means for the long-term care of Californians who are disabled by autism. So I can't emphasize enough the need for strong advocates to join our board and to make and to help foment the change that we need. And then also, if you're interested, just sign up for our newsletter at our website, sfautismsociety.org. Find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook events group that's huge and very active. And you can also email us for more information.
Fantastic. I know one of the things that you and I interact on quite often, where our interests merge, it has to do with policy. And, I have can you kind of give us a flavor of things that you're fighting for and things that you have fought for?
Yes. Okay. So good question. We have fought against new policies that tend to diminish the options that are available for autistic adults. So there's been a strong push in the disability advocacy community to defund programs that are appropriate and needed by those who suffer from severe autism. And we advocate strongly for the retention of those programs and not for the defunding of them. For example, California unfortunately passed a law prohibiting non-competitive employment for adults with autism and severe intellectual disabilities. So people who used to be able to work for below minimum wage are now out of a job. And that means children like mine will never be able to work. It was a draconian, terrible bill, and we fought against it and we lost, unfortunately. So now my kids, at best, maybe they can be volunteers in their adult lives, but they'll never be able to work. We've also seen a weakening of our conservatorship system. We're at a place where the conservatorship system is very overloaded, mostly because of the dramatic increase in autism cases. We need to strengthen our conservatorship system, not weaken it. So we've fought against that. We've also fought against weakening of options that are fundable through our Medicaid dollars. We believe that we need the full continuum of care available for adults with autism, and that should be available through Medicaid waivers and or other Medicaid services. And we have definitely fought very hard for better reporting and analysis of autism data from California. There's not enough of this at all, considering that we're in the midst of the staggering epidemic. We hardly ever hear about it. We've just had CDC just did a study finding 4% of children in San Diego County have autism, 4%. And every year, our DDS autism caseload grows by 11%. It's really quite scary, and it's underreported. We fight for more housing options, more housing subsidies across many jurisdictions. We obviously fight for better funding for regional center services, which are the vital lifeline for our population, and for better wages for support staff. Their work is not easy, and we are suffering a terrible DSP crisis, a direct service professional crisis, and more services broadly for severely autistic adults. A lot of them are sitting at home with nothing to do, and that would include my son. So yeah, that gives you a flavor of what we do on the advocacy front.
And I know the Autism Society of San Francisco has been a powerful voice here when it comes to policies. We don't always get what we want, but once again, I think oftentimes you bring the voice of reason in the system where things are not always reasonable. So there we go. As far as your organization is concerned, do you have any special outreach or to different communities or folks who speak different languages or that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, we talked about the Stanford conferences, and those have always been translated into Spanish, and we've always featured Spanish language groups and panels. We've also featured some Chinese language content as well. And in terms of what we do outside of the conference, I have to admit it largely depends on who's volunteering for us and who's on our board. We don't have paid staff, and we have had, fortunately, a very diverse board with Spanish speakers and people who speak other languages. Unfortunately, not me. And so we have been able to serve people from a wide variety of backgrounds. But again, we do depend on our network of volunteers to help us with that.
Well, that might be a great place to end this talk today, which is I know you have a pretty robust website up here, and we'll put that up for folks to see. But, how could somebody get involved? Both a person with autism or somebody in the spectrum or a family member or a professional, if you have an interest in learning more and ideally serving this community, how can you help these folks out?
Yeah, well, I think we have, as I said, we have volunteer opportunities. We're always interested in talking to people who are interested in board membership, who bring to the table a particular talent or strength. If somebody's really interested in fundraising, or somebody's really interested in policy advocacy, if somebody's really interested in organizing events, if somebody's really interested in establishing like a better resources and information and referral system, all that is wide open. We really welcome people, whether they're parents, whether they're professionals, whether they're just people who care about autism. We really welcome them to work with us, and we're easy to find. Info at sfautismsociety.org or at sfautismsociety.org. Either one works. My email is my name, jill.escher, my last name, at gmail.com. You can reach out to me directly as well.
Great. Well, Jill, I want to thank you for sharing this information with me. And I also want to personally thank you because I know you've been an advocate for years and years and years. Let's not go through how many here, but I know that, you personally have been a force in the community here. And sometimes it takes a passionate parent to try to make a little sense out of this system. So,
yes, well, the system needs a lot of help. So we need all of us. And thank you too, Steve.
Our next presenter is Daane, who is the Executive Director of Parents Helping Parents, a family resource center and one of nearly 100 parent training and information centers here and community parent resource centers in the U.S. and territories. In many ways, a family resource center is the entry point for families with children with intellectual and developmental disabilities to connect to essential services in their communities. For professionals, most family resource centers have already listed most of the programs in their communities, so being familiar with your family resource center and similar programs is absolutely essential.
hi, Maria. I'm so pleased that that you're able to work with us today and help teach us about your program here. So, I want to start off by asking you a question about, can you tell me what a parent center is?
Great question. So we have dozens of parent centers in the state of California that are communities of parents who have children with special needs, who support other parents who have children with special needs in navigating systems of care. So the not to get too jargony, but there's a family resource center. Family resource centers in every county in California for ages 0 to 3. There's family empowerment centers in about half the counties in California, and they serve age 3 to 22 just in their county. And then there's parent training and information centers that serve families of children 0 to 26. A lot of the work the parent training and information centers do is around working with the school districts. And no matter what county you're in, there is a parent training information center that can serve you. So to find the local parent center, you can follow the link in the adjoining worksheets.
And, part of this, and we had talked about this before, I always look at programs like yours as like the entry point for many families into the whole world of services, dealing with folks with dealing with children with disabilities. A lot of the focus is on persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but I always look at this as like the entry point into the system. So can you tell me a little bit about your focus specifically at PHP, who you serve, ages, that sort of thing?
So at our parent center, we serve parents whose children are all ages. And our philosophy is that if a parent is informed and supported, that they can build the brightest future for their child possible. And we serve people statewide through our website, php.com. And then for Silicon Valley families, we do one-on-one services over the phone. And we provide a lot of information regarding systems of care, public benefits, the school district. And then we provide a lot of support also on disability specific. There's disability specific groups. There's groups that form around different ages. And there's so many services for the child with disabilities or for the adult with disabilities. But parent centers are really the only group that are focused exclusively on supporting and informing the parents, because clearly the parents are a huge part of the services that child gets.
And I know for myself, both as a professional but also as an advocate, once again, I find your program and programs like yours to have just a wealth of resources and information and that sort of thing. So maybe we can get into a little bit about what are the typical programs, education programs and things like that, in trying to guide families and advocates and persons with disabilities through this system, which sometimes just seems so overwhelming?
So I'll give you an example. This morning I was meeting with a father whose son is 20 and has an intellectual disability and will be graduating from the school district, his specialized school district program at age 22. And so 2 years from now, he will need some, either a day program or a tailored day program. And then the family wants to work on supported housing. They would like their son to be in his own housing by the age of 25. And he said, kind of, where do we start? And parent centers can really be incredibly helpful for this whole process because we have resources on all aspects of the young adult maturing and all the resources and services that can be put in place for that young adult. And so we will be working with these parents over the next couple of years to go through, what's a day program versus a tailored day program? What are the different housing options? How long are the wait lists for the different housing options? And so that the parents and their son can make informed choices about his life. As well, we do a lot of work in person-centered thinking and person-centered planning to make sure that the interests and what the young adult loves is incorporated into their life plan.
Well, that is terrific. I know for myself here, programs like yours are such a wealth of information here, and I know oftentimes I use programs like yours to get some idea about what services are in the community. I know I've visited PHP many times, and you folks have so many resources here, including classes and libraries and things like that here. And so, for instance, I know you do run classes. Can you give me some idea of what kind of classes you run for families and that sort of thing?
Sure, and your comment actually reminds me of a phrase we often use here at PHP, which is, you don't know what you don't know. And for parents who are raising a child with a disability or who have an adult disability, they've never done this before. So we try to add information to that gap around making sure that parents do know what they need to know. Our agency does between 40 and 60 Zooms a month on all sorts of topics: early start services, IEPs, 504s. Those are the IEPs and 504s are programs with the school district. We do support groups for parents who are feeling overwhelmed. We have a support group for parents of adult children with developmental disabilities. We occasionally have expert speakers who come in and speak about social emotional learning or encouraging executive functioning. So depending on the month, there's always different trainings. I would highly recommend everybody get on the newsletter for their local parent center so you can be informed about what's coming up, because we'll do 600 different trainings this year, and if you're on the newsletter, you'll be able to skim them and decide what's the best trainings for you. Or follow us on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn to find out about what trainings that are coming up.
Maria, we had talked earlier about the importance of diversity in serving our community. Can you share with us a little bit about how you deal with folks from different backgrounds and that sort of thing? Do you have programs specific for those communities?
Absolutely. So for our community here in Silicon Valley, we primarily serve in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, as those are the top 3 languages in our community. Different family resource centers or parent training and information centers offer other languages. Support for Families from San Francisco particularly does a lot of work with the Chinese-speaking population. So depending on your region, you'll find resources beyond just English.
Right. Terrific. And I will tell you, we work with many centers similar to yours, and what we have found is that usually they will adjust their services and their outreach according to their communities, and that's one of the reasons why these things are different from many of the programs are similar, but they are different from group to group. And this is really a great resource when we're dealing folks from many cultures here. So along that line. One thing that we're really focused on are transition services, the whole process of transitioning, usually, from childhood to adulthood and that sort of thing. Maria, I know that you folks run a transition fair. I think that's what you call it. Sometimes they call them different things. But can you share us a little bit with us about what that is and how folks might be able to get involved in this and what the value of this is?
Absolutely. So we've been holding transition fairs and resource fairs, which bring vendors together, providers, as well as the families that they are trying to connect with. We typically do it once a year, and other parent centers throughout the state do it for their region as well. And historically, they've been in person. Lately, they've been online, and see what the future brings. It's a great way of learning about what providers may be in your region all at the same time. So you go to a room, and typically there's 60 to 80 different providers that have recreational resources and legal resources, educational resources, and so you can really get a sense of the variety and depth of services in your community. I would also say that for transitioning to adulthood, PHP has a new statewide program called Connections California. It's on our website, php.com, and it offers an e-learning library as well as 100 webinars a year on adult transition-related topics such as housing, financial planning, life planning, person-centered thinking, employment, kind of all the things that we have to prepare for as our young adult grows into an adult.
I know one thing we probably should have covered is almost all centers will have resource directories. Do you happen to have a resource directory?
So our resource directory is online, and we have over 2,000 resources that can be searched geographically. And I believe most parent centers have resource directories of some sort. Depending on how large the parent center is, what they offer and their resources may vary greatly, but almost everything parent centers provide are free to parents. So that's kind of another thing we neglected to mention, that in general, these are all free services funded through the state of California or through the federal government. So you should make use of them so that they can support your family or your clients' families.
The other thing that, for folks that are wanting to get more engaged in their community, and we really want to encourage, especially the professionals, to be engaged in their community. Are there opportunities on occasion for attorneys, fiduciaries, and that kind of thing to share their knowledge through your center?
There is. So at our center, we do have professionals who come in and do presentations to families. We allow no sales pitches. We don't want people ever to come to our parent center and be sold something. It's not what we do. However, we do make arrangements with professionals to provide information. Of course, there are hundreds more professionals than there are slots for presentations, but we do work with professionals to make sure that if there's a gap in knowledge, especially around very technical issues, that professionals are presenting on that to our families.
Great. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for joining us today here and sharing us, information about what these parent centers, oftentimes called family resource centers, but what these things are, and specifically sharing this with us about your particular program. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Before we go to our last presentation here, let's go to our next MCLE code, which is 3037. That is 3037. Remember, if you wish to get credit for watching this program, here you need to take those codes and put it on our MCLE form. And to get that, you can go to gspt.org/attorney-resources. So, our last presenter is Sheridan Nicholau, Regional Manager of the Bay Area State Council on Developmental Disabilities. The State Council operates at a state and regional level. On the state level, the State Council on Developmental Disabilities is established by state and federal law as an independent state agency to ensure that people with developmental disabilities and their families receive the services and supports that they need. At the regional level, regional offices with the regional advisory committees provide education and advocacy programs geared to the unique needs in their region.
So we're really privileged to have Sheridan Nicholau, who is a regional manager for the State Council here. Sheridan, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about what is the State Council on Developmental Disabilities?
I'm happy to, and thanks for having me today. So a little bit about the State Council and about our work for Californians and how you can connect with us in the future. So the California State Council on Developmental Disabilities believes that Californians with developmental disabilities are guaranteed the same full and equal opportunities for life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, just as all Americans. And so with that in mind, we advocate, we promote, and we also implement policies and practices that achieve everything from self-determination, independence, productivity, but most importantly, inclusion in all aspects of community life for people with developmental disabilities and their families. And so at a big picture, this is what we do. So we empower individuals and their families through activities and systems navigation that teaches self-advocacy skills and supports self-determination. We advance public policy and systems change to help people gain more control over their lives. And we also do a lot of projects that help build capacity within systems and within the community overall. And we do this through a plan called California State Plan. We develop a state plan every 5 years with input and involvement from our community. And then we submit this plan and the annual reports of our progress to the Federal Administration on Community Living. This work isn't just in California. There's actually a state council in every state and US territory in the nation. And you can read more about the state councils as well as the state protection and advocacy systems, also known as PNAs, and the University Centers for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, also known as UCEDS, and the projects of national significance. Those are all located in the Federal Developmental Disabilities and Bill of Rights Act. The DD Act, as it's often called, talks about these programs that conduct research and test innovative best practices and new service delivery models. And they also bring the latest knowledge and resources to those that can put it to best use across the nation. But most importantly, these programs of the DD Act, they empower individuals with developmental disabilities and their families to help them get involved and to help them shape policies in ways that impact their lives day to day. And the State Council's role here in California is also detailed in the California's Lanterman Act. And here's where you can read more about that act, which is also codified in the California Welfare and Institutions Code.
So Sheridan, who do you serve, and once again, who do you work with day to day?
Yeah. So we work with people with developmental disabilities, all ages, all life stages. We work with their family members, their friends, their allies. We work with cross-disability communities and civil rights advocates. And we also work with public and private sector services and systems. And, in terms of our staff, we have both bilingual and multilingual staff across the state. We also utilize language line services so we can get professional interpreters over the phone in a relatively short amount of time. And for a lot of our events, our trainings, different types of workshops, we can offer language interpretation, ASL, and other access accommodations. So just let us know what you need to fully participate. And so most people interact with the State Council through the Council's regional offices. And the State Council has regional offices all across the state. We have 12 of them to best meet the diversity and the scope of the needs in California. And so what we do there is we do a few different types of things. We connect people to needed services and supports in their area. give them information about their rights, information that's relevant to their local community. We strive to improve services and supports, review practice and policies, see how those systems are actually serving people in that area, help them build capacity. And we help people be a part of their communities and just get them involved in areas of their interest. And much of the work of the State Council staff can be grouped into what we consider to be 3 buckets: advocacy, capacity building, and systems change. So let's look at some of the examples of this work. So the first bucket is advocacy. This includes helping people navigate various systems of services, supports, benefits, that kind of thing. Trainings, so that people know their rights and what's available to them. Technical assistance, which provides person-centered advice or guidance or resources for people. And collaboration with others, especially for those that have shared values or advocacy interests. We really appreciate doing that. The second bucket has to do with capacity building. And so that can be everything from serving on coalitions and committees, again, providing trainings or different education and outreach opportunities, connecting folks with disabilities to different seats of power or to leadership opportunities so that we have strong representation in positions of power. We also have annual grants, both statewide grants and regional grants, as well as year-round sponsorship opportunities. And we also advise and support leaders and communities that are dedicated to advancing rights and equity forward. You know, some of that is also supporting leadership bodies and different committees. For example, California Self-Determination Local Advisory Committees, People First chapters, and a variety of other self-advocacy groups and networks across the state. The third bucket of work can be described as systems change. So that can be anything from shoring up systems that serve people with developmental disabilities, again, keeping an eye on policies and procedures, and influencing policy by mapping out the true impact to people with developmental disabilities and folks with other disabilities. So on a state policy and legislation level, some examples include our co-sponsorship, for example, of California's SB 639. That's a bill that passed last year that ensures that California transitions away from paying employees with disabilities less than minimum wage. Or our service on California's COVID-19 Advisory Vaccine Committee, or the work that we do with legislative offices to make sure that policymakers across the state both hear and really understand the needs and the concerns and the feedback from their constituents with disabilities. And on a county or a regional level, we also serve on committees and coalitions, including county COVID-19 advisory committees, planning commissions, and advocacy-related collaborations that advance those rights and access and equity for the folks that we care about. And so those are a few ways, but many people also get involved with us through our regional advisory committees, otherwise known as RACs. So we have a RAC in every state council region, so that's 12 total here in California. The RACs advise the state council and the regional offices on local issues that matter. The RAC provides input regarding local systemic needs within that community that they serve, and provides public info programs for folks with developmental disabilities and their families and professional groups, public awareness campaigns, that kind of thing. Those RACs are representative of the diversity of that particular region within California. And they hold public meetings, usually many a year, oftentimes every couple of months. Members that serve are community members, local leaders. They serve terms up to 2 terms of 3 years apiece. Sometimes regional advisory committees form work groups for specific purposes. For example, here in the Bay Area, in the last couple of years, we had a work group on racial justice. We had one on healthcare clinic quiet lab settings. And we had another one recently on conservatorship reform here in California. Important to know that RACs can make recommendations to the council, but they can't take a position that's independent of the council. And each RAC has somewhere between 9 to 15 members, depending on the need, and at least 35% of the RAC members are people with lived experience with developmental disabilities, with another at least 35% being family advocates, and then the remaining service providers or other types of professionals in the community.
So Sheridan, can you tell me a little bit more about the council, really how it's organized here at the state level?
Sure. So the state council itself has 31 voting members. About 60%, at least 60%, are people with lived experience with developmental disabilities and family advocates. And the council focuses on long-term solutions through systems change work and represents all of the diversity of California. So 20 of the 31 voting members are non-agency members who reflect that socioeconomic, geographic, disability, racial, ethnic, and language diversity of California, and are leaders, again, either with lived experience with developmental disabilities or our family members. And so aside from those 20, the remaining voting members of the State Council include directors or designees from a variety of departments, such as California's Health and Human Services Agency, the Department of Developmental Services, the Department of Rehabilitation, the Department of Education, Department of Healthcare Services, and Department of Aging. And then lastly, the remaining voting members are from one non-governmental agency, California's Sibling Leadership Network, and our Developmental Disabilities Act federal partners, and that includes Disability Rights of California and the University Centers for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. So that includes UC Davis's Mind Institute, UCLA's Tarjan Center, and USC's UCED at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. And the council has public meetings throughout the year where you can listen in and give public comment. The council also has a variety of committees that hold public meetings throughout the year. And we really encourage you, take a look on our website or take a look at this list here of the committees of the council. We encourage you to keep tabs on what we're doing, maybe bookmark or council calendar and join in on the meetings of your interest in choosing for advocacy. So that includes everything from Self-Advocates Advisory Committee, our Legislative and Public Policy Committee, the Employment First Committee, State Plan Committee, the Statewide Self-Advocacy Network, Statewide Self-Determination Advisory Committee, and we also have self-advocacy chats, so bringing together self-advocates from across the state. And lastly, your local state council regional office would love to see you at events, trainings, collaborations, or outreach, either online or in person. So take a look at the contact info for the state council regional office that serves your county. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks for being a part of our community. And thanks for tuning in and for your role in securing and upholding access, equity, and inclusion for all.
So, Sheridan, how would you find your counterparts here? As you said, there's multiple regions in California.
Yeah, so you'll see on the slide here, we have a regional office near you. Look for your county in this list, and there's the phone number in the website for that regional office. So if you reach out, you can find out about your local RAC meetings, upcoming conferences or trainings or events. Lots of ways to get involved.
You know, the state council is always a great source of information here, and once again, I believe I'm on your mailing list for both the local and the state. How does one do that, and what kind of information are we going to get if we're on the mailing list?
Yeah, great question. So this last slide that we're sharing with you has our website as well as contact information, email, phone number, and the like. You can see we have here a link of how you can join our email list, and you can choose. You can choose to only be on your local regional office mailing list, email list, or you can choose to also be on the statewide list and get notices about legislation, advocacy opportunities, big statewide happenings that are important for advocates of all kinds to know about. Your regional list is going to let you know about what's happening locally. So everything from rights trainings or conferences or other activities based on different interests. And then we also want you to get social with us. You'll see our Facebook contact, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. So however you prefer to stay in touch with us, we'd love that.
Let me throw out one last question here that I get all the time. Is the state council part of the regional center, or are you separate? And I know you went through the federal mandate, but you know, oftentimes I think there's a lot of confusion about that.
Yeah, I think it's because our regional offices are called regional offices, not to be confused with regional centers. Absolutely, we are separate entities. We're both in federal and state law, as we discussed earlier. So regional centers are independent nonprofits that receive funding through the Department of Developmental Services for California. So very separate entities. In some cases, the State Council may partner with regional centers or with the Department of Developmental Services on shared goals and objectives, working towards access, services, and equity for people with developmental disabilities. And other times not. We're also making sure that systems like DDS and like regional centers are well serving people with developmental disabilities and their families. That's a big focus for us.
I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing the work that you do. And I know just for myself as a professional, a family member, and as an advocate, I know the information that I get out of the State Council here, both at the regional level and the state level, really help me try to make some sense out of this system.
Well, thanks for all you're doing. It's always great to partner with you.
Okay, first question is is focused on Jill's presentation on autism rates in the country, in California. And the question is California autism rates rising faster than the rest of the country?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I don't know if you saw that last month, the CDC came out with new autism prevalence numbers based on research in 8-year-olds at 11 sites throughout the country. And that found an overall prevalence rate of 1 in 36. It's almost 3% of all children. It's 4.3% of all boys and more than 1% of all girls. Now, if you track the rates over time found by the CDC against the rates over time, the prevalence over time based on California DDS data, you will see the same kind of rate of increase, although the population, the prevalence in California's DDS system is of course much lower because the standard for inclusion is much higher, right? You have to have a more complex level of disability, more severe disability to be included in the regional center system, and counted by DDS. Having a clinical diagnosis of autism is definitely not enough, but it definitely tracks in terms of just overall trend lines with national data. And it grows about 11% a year over year in California. And that same increase has been found in New Jersey.
So are you saying that California and New Jersey are higher than the rest of the country?
Well, the CDC data suggests that California's clinical autism rates might be higher than the rest of the country. They found 4% of 8-year-olds in San Diego County had diagnoses of autism. However, when we look at the regional center data, which is what I presented in my presentation, that's a different definition. It's a more restrictive definition, and that will be lower because you have to be more disabled to be included.
Okay. Next question is, all of this information is great, but I'm overwhelmed. I have a 3-year-old son with autism who was just diagnosed. Where do I start? And I don't know who wants to take a stab at that.
I can, and then Jill can certainly add to it. There are, throughout the state of California, there are Department of Developmental Services family resource centers, not to be confused with the more broad term of family resource center, of which there are several throughout the state of California, which have different focuses. But family resource centers, and I can drop this in the chat, there's a family resource center network of California. And you can go to that website, look to see where the family resource centers are, and it could be that there's one covering wherever you might be. Family resource centers cover from 0 to 3 years old. So you also might want to look at parent training information centers, which are called PTIs, and they are also sprinkled throughout California. I think there are about 8 of them serving multiple counties. And you can find the number for either the FRC, Family Resource Center, or PTI, Parent Training Information Center, in your area You could also check for family empowerment centers, which are funded by the California Department of Education, and there also might be one in your area. And I can drop all three of those websites into the chat. And there you can call and more likely than not reach a parent, a fellow parent on the other end of the line, and whether they're called a resource specialist or parent advisors, whatever they may be called, and they will help walk you through steps that you can take when you just get a diagnosis. And they understand that overwhelming feeling because we've all been there. And that's what the model of a parent training information center was back in 1974 when it was first started, was to have parents help parents, hence the name of the organization I work with now. So Jill,
Alyssa, if I could kind of build on that just for a moment, just from my perspective, I know just as a professional, as an advocate, and also with the Golden State Pool Trust, normally when I have, a new parent who is looking to get connected with the system, I'm going to find out what I can. And this is where, once again, there's many family resource centers around. Usually I'll direct them there. And then the other one part of that is to drill down a little bit deeper about what kind of supports they have. And this is where programs like the Autism Society, different Down syndrome groups and that kind of thing. I've always kind of seen the Family Resource Center as like the entry point, and then from there it just spreads so far. So, I just, as we get into this, our focus is pretty broad. Our focus is on families, kind of an advocates, kind of an introduction to the system, but the other one is for professionals. Once again, what I have found is that the family resource centers and similar programs are like a really good way to get started. And then you can kind of build from there, especially when you're dealing with somebody very young to what their specific needs are. I don't know. I know Jill and Amy, you're both parents. You've kind of been to this. We've decided that we don't call it living the dream. We call it living the challenge now. But is that, as far as like you're getting into the system, what is good advice for new parents who are just new to this whole thing?
Yeah, well, getting an autism diagnosis on your young child is devastating. And I've been through it twice. I have two kids with severe nonverbal autism, and both times the breath of life was sucked out of me. And I really, really sympathize with this mother and with all parents. So, when the child is young, the usual mantra is that early intervention is important. There are actually three routes to early intervention. The first is through your school district, because actually when the kid is 3, you're eligible for IFSP services, I believe. Or what is it through the school? Do they call it IFSP at the school?
It would be an IEP.
IEP at the school. The IFSP is regional center.
The IFSP would be during early start with the regional center.
Regional center, right.
Right.
And so the regional center is another route. They are the payer of last resort, but nevertheless, they do provide early intervention services. And then the third is private insurance. And there's been quite a bit of development of autism infrastructure for young children through behavioral therapies. Now, a lot of these therapies, I'm just going to be very honest, because I'm always very honest, tend to be really ineffective and overblown and overhyped, very expensive and time consuming. But they do help a subset of kids, and it's definitely worth exploring, different therapies to see if they help. Stanford has what they call a PRT program that is probably worth looking into. I would also call, Stanford has a line that you can call, for information about early intervention services. And then as the kid grows older and you're in the school years, that's a whole other set of worries. And then as the kid ages out of school, that's an entirely other set of worries. So the worries never stop, they just change.
My story is similar. Our son was 2 years old when there was suspected issues about his behaviors. We immediately went to see the neurologist and went to Children's Hospital to find out if there was a hearing loss and all the things they tell you to do. And then you eventually get this kind of NPP, NOS diagnosis, which just means we don't know yet. And then you go to the regional center and you go to your school district and start the challenge. And it takes, several years to really figure out whether he really did have autism or not. I did, I started getting involved with the school district, Oakland Unified. They had a community advisory committee. I sought advice from other parents, especially other parents who had young children. But it is pretty overwhelming because there's so many therapies out there. There's so many things that you can try, and it can take over your life. So you have to try things, but still manage to live your life. And if you have another child who is neurotypical, you have to pay attention to them too. But I did find the Family Resource Network in Oakland to be a lot stronger at that time. I don't think their edict at that time was 0 to 3 because they put on presentations about how to put together an IEP. But in recent years, I haven't seen much coming from them. But Alyssa, I think you did say that family resource networks are 0 to 3. Is that a new thing?
Not new. There are many agencies throughout the state of California who help parents either with kids with needs or without needs call themselves family resource centers. So you can think of it as a big umbrella. But as far as a family resource center designated by the Department of Developmental Services to only work with children 0 to 3, the early start family resource centers, those are the ones who only work with 0 to 3. There could be other ones, I don't know this one you're talking about in Oakland, who could service the lifespan, and they call themselves a family resource center. I admit, when I was first hired at Matrix Parent Resource Center back in 14 years ago, I was the early years parent advisor, and I was confused. Like, what's a family resource center with the DDS? And what about all these other family resource centers who serve kids who are 15 years old? So it is confusing and it's overwhelming. So that's why my knee-jerk reaction was to say, get in touch with either the Family Resource Center in your area, the DDS Family Resource Center, or the PTI or the FEC, because then you can take these steps, all the things that Jill was saying and that Amy was saying, the person on the other end of the phone will help you make a plan, because you can't do all these things at once. But yeah, you do probably want to call the regional center and see if you can get an evaluation. That's a regional center evaluation. If the child is 3, you probably do want to call the school district and start getting an assessment. That's an assessment through the school district. So we could kind of help you to work out a timeline, how is best, also while you're living your life, and you could be working and you could have other kids, just trying to make it a reasonable approach to it.
And I guess as a follow-on, there are so many autism organizations, maybe not locally, but there's the Autism Society, there's Autism Speaks, there's the Autism Foundation, there's the Autism Spectrum Disorder Foundation. How are they all legit, and which ones do you get involved with? Jill, maybe you can touch on that.
There are a lot of autism organizations. Some are national. I'm the president of National Council on Severe Autism. That's obviously national. Autism Speaks. There's Autism Society of America, and these are organizations that tend to focus on sort of broader issues of awareness and advocacy. And then there are the local level organizations like Autism Society San Francisco Bay Area. There are other kind of more service oriented organizations that provide whether it's education or a lot of autism schools, for example. There are disability nonprofits that serve, people with developmental disabilities. It just depends on what you want. I mean, every organization focuses on something different. Some, like for example, National Council on Severe Autism focuses on, children and adults with obviously severe forms of autism, intellectual disability, minimally verbal, complex behaviors. But others might focus on higher functioning autism, for example. Some are focused more on parents. Some organizations are more focused on, the independent individuals. Some are focused on children. Some are focused on adults. It just depends. Autism Society San Francisco Bay Area, as I said, is really trying to build a stronger autism community locally. And so we really focus on, networking, events, support. Hope that helps.
So if I could build on that a little bit, one thing about these different programs is, what's a nice way to put this? Joining is not that expensive, right? As an attorney, I'm just here to tell you, every organization I join, it's $500 just to start talking. So, Jill, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to belong to multiple organizations based on your need?
Well, we're free.
Well, that's even cheaper.
Both of my organizations are free, so there's really no reason not to. These aren't professional. I mean, most of these organizations give out information and support for free. There's no charge. If you're looking for a professional organization, then that's a different issue.
That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But I'll just make this observation, for instance, and I know one of these things doing this, I get to go through people's websites and all that. One of the things we had covered is it's not just getting the diagnosis, it's not just getting the different services. Those are all important, but part of it is community. And I know, for instance, one of the reasons I wanted to have a disability specific organization is if you go to your website, you guys have lots of activities, and I'm on your newsletter, so I'm constantly getting reminders that, hey, we're doing this here, doing that there. You guys are pretty busy, but
yes,
that is
no question.
So even for the professional, I would kind of submit that, oftentimes we're way too focused on getting qualified for benefits on progress that I myself wouldn't want to be on, but that's a whole other subject. But there's a lot more to it than that. Part of it is not being alone. And I will say, I think some of us have had more experiences than we like. Suicide is not an uncommon event for family members. And I know the 3 or 4 cases I've been involved, I think it's because of a sense of isolation and that I'm alone in the world, and all of that. And just that the
isolation can be intense. Oh, the isolation can be absolutely overwhelming. No question. Yeah.
Amy, I know we got a ton of questions. What's next, kid?
Well, we are talking a lot about autism, but what about behavioral health? My 20-year-old son has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He's also being treated with autism. Can he get regional center services, and where can I find help and services for bipolar disorder?
That's a good question.
Okay. NAMI comes to mind. It's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I can also put that into the chat. As far as getting regional center services, so it's my understanding that in order to be eligible for the regional center, the disability must begin before. I think that means that you couldn't get somebody qualified and eligible after their 18th birthday, but the disability has to begin before the 18th birthday, which means you'd have to have some kind of paper trail or some kind of diagnosis before the 18th birthday. That said, not every individual with autism and is a regional center client. There are certain stipulations. For lack of a better term, high functioning autism, individuals with high functioning autism usually aren't regional center clients. And regional center also is not a place for people with mental illness. The regional center helps people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So if it's the bipolar disorder, probably would not be a qualifying eligibility for the regional center, no matter what age. Does anybody else have anything to add to that?
The only thing I would add to that is that I just know from my involvement with the ARC of California and
and I tend to have my finger in everything. So, but that's just what I do here. To me, it seems incredibly unfair that if you have a developmental disability, it seems like you should get a pass and you shouldn't have any other disabilities. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. And what we're finding is more and more dual diagnosed folks. So I'd say there's two things. One is, finding the programs like NAMI. I know Alameda County has a special focus. The other part, since we're talking about information and advocacy, and that's specifically what we're after, is part of it is communicating back to our policymakers. This would include our disability organizations and the state council about what our needs are, because I know this is a big focus right now of dual diagnosis. As far as with the specific family member, can they show that the disability is primarily developmentally disabled before the age of 18? Once again, that's not something we can cover here, but there are folks that can help you. And, once again, a lot of it is information and advocacy. And part of it is, maybe this is a good thing on top of that. I know that Amy is a listserv junkie. I know because she's constantly feeding me stuff here. But, oftentimes with the different disability organizations and all that, with the different listservs, I see parents trading information all the time about where can I find this service? Where can I find that service? Where can I find a pediatrician who can deal with special issues with Down syndrome, that kind of thing. Sometimes it's just communication amongst themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, PHP listserv is probably one of the best.
Thanks.
And you don't, and you probably could be, I know you have to ask to be a part of it, but you probably don't limit it to the Bay Area.
No.
So you can hop on that list and get a lot of information from other parents, and there's just a wealth of knowledge in that list. People ask questions all the time.
Yeah, several support groups PHP has. I can put that in the link to the chat too. But I think there's also a Facebook group that's actually international, parents of adult children with disabilities. And that is very far-reaching and moderated by Trudy Gable, who's one of the best. But in any event, parents are often the best source of information for other parents, especially locally. If you want to know, who's a good speech therapist? If you call your local PTI or FEC, they'll give you a choice of 3. They're not going to point to one person. But if you go out to lunch with the other mom or dad, but more times it's mom, and say, this is my kid, this is how they present, what do you think? And they'll say, oh, we love our speech therapist. And then, that's how you learn, that's how you network.
So for you professionals out there that are trying to guide folks to, services and things that can help, that can be a really big part of it. And by the way, they do talk here. They're not above talking about you either. I see that on occasion. Amy, what else do we have?
This one you probably can answer. I'm a parent seeking an attorney who understands special needs children, and I don't know how to find one.
Well, I have different places to go to, but since we're talking about advocacy and education organizations here, I'd actually like to throw this back to Alyssa to a degree. And I'd also like to suggest something here, that there was a time when, for instance, the Dale Law Firm was almost the only game in town here, and that's far from true. There's a lot of really good attorneys out there. And one of the reasons we're even doing this program at all is one of things I like to call a Daleism, which is, if your attorney doesn't know the difference between an IEP or an IPP and an SUV, how could they possibly put together a trust to supplement services if they don't understand the system? So I think part of this is, at least for me, here is that I'm always looking for attorneys, fiduciaries, professionals who aren't just selling a product or a thing, but actually understand the breadth and the scope of this community and the challenge. I don't know. Alyssa, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a very valid point, and somebody can understand without being a parent themselves, but there are several professionals out there who are actually parents of kids with needs, and that helps even that much more. But it's just like anything else. If you're going to sell your house or you're going to look to buy a house, you're probably going to interview, 3 or 4 realtors, and then you're going to go with the person you click with, because you're going to develop a relationship with them and you're going to want to trust them. So, I would approach it the same way, and I would, you can go onto the PHP resource guide, which is accessible to the public, and you can search for, attorneys, special needs attorneys or special needs trust attorneys, and get several names. You can go to the Disability Rights California website. I think they have a whole listing of folks who are attorneys in the whole state of California, who deal with special needs. We often, I think Maria Daane mentioned this in her segment, we often have folks coming on and doing presentations for us. In fact, Stephen is coming on next week talking about the different alternatives for guardianship and conservatism versus supported decision making versus help
Conservatorships.
Thank you, conservatorships, but also power of attorney. The joint power of attorney.
Attorney supported decision.
Anyway, yes, attorney supported decision. So in any event, we have professionals coming on and doing presentations. So when you come to the presentation, if you like that person's style, well, then you can always contact them afterwards, because you get a little bit more than maybe a 10-minute interview conversation. So I think the important thing is to click with the person, feel like you can trust them, because this is a huge deal, right? Your special needs trust, your special needs planning. It's a huge deal. So you want to have trust.
So my hope is, before we move on to the next question, and for those who are watching this, either whether you're watching this live or you're watching recorded, my personal belief is that there are some places you can go that are a good start, like the Special Needs Alliance and the Academy of Special Needs Planners. Personally, for me, I'm more interested in people that are invested in this community, that serve on board. Quite frankly, people that probably took this course. Once again, I would really question any attorney or fiduciary who's doing work in this area, that if they don't understand the Lanterman service system, how could you possibly design a trust to supplement those services if you don't understand those services? So this is an area where I'm hoping as time goes on, we'll have a better measurable way for parents to really understand, are you hiring this person because they made a good presentation and have a really cool website? Or is this really somebody who's invested and understands my child's needs? So, Amy, let's chug a couple more down.
Just as a quick announcement, there was a question about part 1 of KTLP. And that link, the first video webinar there's a link on the Golden State Pooled Trust website under Attorney Resources, the same place you can find the form for the MCLE credit. So all webinars that's put on by GSPT that offer MCLE credit are listed there. So if you're looking for the webinar, that's your easiest place to find it.
And by the way, while we're having this discussion and talking about credit, how about if we do our final code, which is to receive credit? The final code is, this is number 3, is 1616. That is 1616. And that's if you're looking to apply for credit by the California State Bar, by the North Bay Housing Coalition, which is the nonprofit that oversees the Golden State Pooled Trust, provider number 14598. Okay, so that is the final code.
This is probably more of a question for Jordan, who's not on the Q&A, but I will ask it in hopes that you can address it, Steve. Is there an ARC in every county in California? I've never heard of any programs in my area. And then the second part of that is, what does the ARC stand for, and how does the regional center interface with the ARC?
Okay. Well, the ARC, as Jordan said, is a national organization here. And most states have a state ARC, so we do. I believe we have 13 chapters. But for instance, in Santa Clara County, we do not have a chapter. To me, and this is just for me, the ARC does an enormous amount of legislative advocacy. In fact, we had a number of things where we did have interactions with Jill and the Severe Autism group and all that. Some of the different chapters like Bakersfield and as such actually are vendors. I think the value, and in fact, I think for most families, you probably want to belong to a number of organizations. To me, the biggest value for the families and folks here is that they do have the largest presence when it comes to advocacy organizations for legislative purposes. And, part of what we really did try to cover is that the entitlement is not a given. In fact, Amy, you know this. I'm a pessimist by practice. So to me, I'm always expecting the system to collapse. Fortunately, that's it. That isn't necessarily so. But part of this, even having the entitlement, having the Lanterman system with its problems, keeping in touch with what's going on with Sacramento and communicating back is like incredibly important. And without that advocacy, we would be like all the other states that have waiting lists, and that would certainly not be good, whether you have an ARC chapter in your backyard or not. Alyssa, any thoughts on that? Or
Well, just that I did put in the chat to everyone the ARC website and the listing of the local chapters. I think
which I would expect somebody from a
17.
family resource center to do, because
That's what we do. We just
that's
go
what
find
you
a
do.
resource and we give it out. Yeah.
There we go. By the way, while I've got you, here's one of my beefs. I always tell folks to find their family resource centers. And are they always called family resource centers?
Well, no, that's what I was saying earlier, is that there are those DDS, Department of Developmental Service, family resource centers that serve a 0 to 3 early start. Then there are the parent training information centers and the family empowerment centers. Then there are other centers just called family resource centers, and that's that big umbrella. They might not get the same federal, state, or local funding that something like PHP or DREDF, or Support for Families in San Francisco, or any number of them get. So that's the confusion, and that's why you, as parents, that's why I put in that find your family resource center, find your the Family Resource Center Network of California, the PTI, the FEC. Start there. I'm not saying that there's not an agency out there that calls himself a family resource center that doesn't have some really valuable information for you, and you should investigate it. But if you're overwhelmed, that's a good place to start.
And each one is different and has a slightly different focus. So my home county of Contra Costa County, it's Care Parent Network, which provides services up to age 18. They're not going to run you out of there if you've got a 19-year-old. They're very much into cultural diversity, especially since we have a large Spanish population. You go across the bay to San Francisco, they are in diversity on steroids. In fact, when I do a presentation there, it is not uncommon to have 5 different translators, which I have learned that my jokes do not translate into any of the Asian languages. They do just fine with Spanish. So you learn things as time goes on, but each of them kind of reflects their communities and their needs, but they're all vastly different.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the last MCLE code? Some people didn't hear it.
Okay, the last MCLE code, actually I remember it, but is 1616.
I just wanted to add that the Monday morning memo that Jordan talked about in his presentation is probably one of the easiest things that you can do to help support advocacy is get on that email list, because they will reach out to you when there's legislative things going on where you can so easily write your legislative representative, or they'll give you the phone numbers to call. They set everything up for you that you just have to kind of click and hit send, and your message goes out. You don't have to do very much. They do all the work for you. So it's one of the easiest ways to become an advocate for our children.
And I also want to say just about the ARC is that so what I do at Parents Helping Parents, I manage something called Connections California Transition to Adulthood. And we are building an online resource and information hub, totally free, filled with e-learning resources and other curated videos and e-packets with information and links, all the resources that we give. It's a statewide push to get information out to everybody who wants this information, families of kids with needs and people with needs themselves. And the ARC has a tool, I think it's called the Center for Future Planning. And I believe they rolled it out in 2021. And it's a really wonderful tool to just at any, if you have an adult or a teen of any age, to kind of look at this and start thinking about planning for the future, because parents aren't going to be alive forever. So it's even if you don't have a local chapter, I mean, this is my point. If you don't have a local chapter of ARC in your area, you can still access a bunch of resources that they have. They have great webinars and trainings. We have curated some of them, and they're on the PHP e-learning channel. So, it's just a matter of there's a lot of information out there, and Connections California is trying to make that small and focused for parents, because we know how difficult it is, because there is so much information out there.
Alyssa, I have a big thing that I've been pushing through these programs. Maybe you can help me out here. Transition fairs. I have to tell you, 1 year, by the way, we are not in a looking for client mode, so I've toned it down. 1 year, I went to 23 transition fairs in the San Francisco Bay Area.
That's a lot.
And let me mention this, and there is a question in this. A transition fair, okay, it's not in IDEA, and oftentimes it comes out of that. But it's something that's very common, and a lot of it has to do with the genesis of a lot of it has to do with IDEA that says there's to be transition services and education, and we're talking about transitioning from childhood to adulthood and services. I know for myself the value, just as a professional, the value of a transition fair is like, we just finished the Alameda County Transition Fair here. You can meet virtually every major disability organization in one afternoon in one place. It would take me an entire year to do that. And then I would have to start all over. The other part of it is an opportunity for folks to better get to know our services. Alyssa, so let me throw you the hardball, which is, where do I find all these? I mean, is there a directory of these things, or how do I find one?
That's a good idea. Maybe the Connections California being a statewide resource hub, we should have a section about a transition service, transition fairs. It depends on who's putting on the transition fair. Often a couple of different agencies come together. Like I think the Alameda one, you have 3 different agencies are putting that on together. So you have a lot of hands helping to put that on. And that's a pretty large and well-respected one. Then you might have a smaller one, like in Solano County, the County Office of Ed puts it on, and it's much smaller. Same thing with Sonoma. So they may not have the breadth of organizations, like you were saying, of like people who come to Alameda. Support for Families in San Francisco also puts on a large one. Now, many of them pivoted and went virtual for a couple of years, and now they're coming back and doing things in person. But I think that if you were looking to find out where there might be one in your area, you can, again, try your PTI or your FEC, not so much your FRC at this point, the Family Resource Center designated by the GDS for the 0 to 3, but your FEC or your PTI, or the school districts or the County Office of Ed. Because again, if it's going to be a smaller one and they just, they have the Department of Rehab representative there, it's not that DOR is actually involved in putting the conference on. They might have a bigger presence. Some of these fairs are just fairs. They're just an auditorium filled with tables and chairs and people shopping their wares kind of thing. Other times the mornings are filled with presentations of people like Steve, who might go and give a presentation on something. Or they have it over a couple of days and they have lots of presentations and they have a morning slot that has 4 things to choose from. That's like the Alameda one. It's large. It takes a long time to put it together. And that's why lots of hands are in that pie to help put it together, because it's a really big one. So it could be a really small one. It could be a really big one. There is no central place to find out where they all are. And I'll put my thinking cap on about that. Not a bad idea.
I will tell you, transitions fairs from where I sit, it's a two-way street. If I want to learn and keep up with my community, they couldn't have made it easier. On the other hand, it's also a good way to communicate what we do. And, I will say disability is a learning experience. It's not just for the families. It's like going to this university that you never graduate. Geez, even when you pass away, there's still learning to do, and it's just the nature of the game. Amy, one last one, and then I think we got to call it a day, kid.
Okay, well, here's one from a fiduciary, not a parent, who wants to get better informed on programs in Los Angeles and Orange County. Especially interested in finding out about transition fairs. Where do I start?
So for folks that are not in the Santa Clara Valley, how do we enlighten those other people on finding services, even in Los Angeles and Orange County?
Yeah, well, again, I go back to that find your PTI, find your parent center in California, because that will direct you to the parent center in LA. It's actually called TASK, TASK. There's also a family resource center there, and that family resource center actually gets funding to serve above 3 years old as well. They get other grants. So they might be a good source of information about transition fairs. LA is a fairly large school district, right? So, maybe focusing in on the SELPA, the SELPA, there, I can put how to find the SELPAs too in the chat, but asking them where there may be transition fairs. I bet there's not one. I bet there are probably multiple ones because the LA area is so large. And I guess the Department of Rehab, you could try with them too, but I would go first with the FECs and the PTIs, then the County Office of Education, and then DOR.
I found it's kind of like a network. You find one, then you find another, then you find another.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you go, oh my God, I had no idea all this was in my backyard.
And they're all connected. I mean, the bigger the fair, the more folks are involved in it.
So I know we have to call it a day. And I want to sneak one in real quick. There was somebody who was asking about summer camps, right? Well, so part of it is, I kind of like to approach this 2 ways. A lot of parents right now are looking for summer camps. I know this has been a big thing as far as getting vendorized through the regional centers, because I know at one time that was something vendorized a lot, sometimes not, whatever. But I think there's 2 parts of this question. One is, if you were looking for a summer camp for one's child, where would you look? And then I'll have a follow-up.
So different organizations publish different. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if you would call Matrix Parent Network in Novato and you wanted a summer camp in Marin, they would probably refer you to an organization which actually publishes and puts out all the summer camps that are happening in Marin, and then you can kind of pick and choose. A lot of newspapers often cover that kind of thing. So I think it would depend on the size of the county, whether or not there is some kind of organization who collects all these things for you. Parent word of mouth is another thing that's really good for finding camps for kids. And then the community centers in each of your towns, they run camps, and they might also have listings of other camps. And, Google searches. We have so much information right at our fingertips as parents that you didn't have 10 years ago. So you can do a Google search about, summer camps for kids with special needs in, Oakland or in my area or whatever it might be.
And I'd kind of like to end this on an advocacy tone, because here's the other part that comes up is that, groups like PHP and the other folks that presented, have such great information, and you will find it's kind of like a network. Once you get started, you'll be cross-referencing back and forth. But the other part of this is that as advocates, a lot of folks might not realize, why do we need a summer camp? Is that just like a fluffy little thing here? And we need to be able to advocate. Why is it that, for instance, if we're going to be using taxpayers' dollars through regional centers to vendorize these things, what is the value of the thing? Now, for me, the value is educate, the need is to educate legislators and policymakers that, part of community living is not just 3 hots and a cot, right? I mean, it's being part of the community, it's having community experiences, it's doing things that many of us take for granted. And the value of the summer camp is not only does it broaden the experience of the person with a developmental disability, it also, quite frankly, gives the parents a little bit of a rest here too, like any other parent. And sometimes we need to advocate that this is an important part of community living. Alyssa, you're going to get the last word, and then this has been a lot of fun, but we got to call it a day.
Advocacy, effective parent advocacy is huge when you have a child with a disability. Learning how to become part of a valued member of every team that you're going to be involved in, from the IFSP that we talked about a little earlier, through the IPP with the regional center, through the adult's life. Self-advocacy is also very important. And I know that when I say that, it is difficult for someone who is profoundly affected to be their own self-advocate, but being able to have someone else then who is more of that person's age be able to advocate for them, because parents are not going to be around forever. So that the desire to educate the whole community, the desire to have that person with a disability get their dreams and their visions for their future somehow relayed, somehow get that information out of them, and then have those teams work together and scaffold to make that happen. That's my wish. That's what I hope for. And that's why I'm doing Connections California, so that every family in California can be educated enough to help their loved one as much as they can, live as full a life as they can.
Listen, I could do this all day long, but the good news is for our audience, I can't, so we have to go. So with that, I want to thank everyone for attending today. For those of you that are watching online, once again, this is available for credit here if you follow the instructions. For the rest of us, hopefully, once again, we've learned a little bit about finding services. There's so many other organizations as well here. But once again, we chose these organizations specifically kind of as the entry point of where you can locate services in your community, and hopefully the value of participating in those programs. Now, once again, the 4 videos that we saw, as well as the 2 videos we saw in part 1 here, those are all individual videos. Those are accessible individually, but to watch this for credit, you need to watch them all together. With that, I want to thank you folks for all attending, and happy advocating.